Welcome and thank you for joining us for our very last Dealer On webinar of 2013. It's called Killer SEO Strategies for 2014, How to Win on Google. My name is Eliana Raggio and I'll be your moderator today. And today's webinar is being presented by Dealer On. And for anyone who isn't familiar with Dealer On, well, we're an award-winning website development company and digital agency. And we're best known for our search engine optimization, best-in-class customer service, and our award-winning websites. At the last NADA, Dealer On received the Best in Show Award for website design from Dealer Marketing Magazine. Dealer On was named the top-rated website provider by Driving Sales in 2012 and 2013, and Dealer On customers have been winners of the Digital Dealer Website Excellence Awards, highly coveted overall winner, and unprecedented 5 times in a row. Dealer On is the only website company that can claim that. We're so committed to lead conversion, optimization, and customer service that we're the only company in the industry to offer a money-back lead guarantee program. So, does your website company guarantee you leads? Well, then maybe you should check us out at dealeron.com. And we have a great show in store for you today. We are very pleased to have Ali Amirazvani as our presenter today. Ali Amirazvani is the president, CEO, and co-founder of Dealer On. He has spent the last 10 years helping dealerships dramatically increase their sales and profitability from their websites and online marketing efforts. Ali is a noted automotive online marketing guru and is also a featured expert contributor to Auto Dealer Monthly magazine. An avid blogger and online contributor, he can be found on all the automotive social networks, and he can be reached at ali@dealeron.com. Now, during the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the question feature located on the corner of your screen to submit them. At the end of the presentation, we'll answer those questions of general interest. If we're unable to get to your question live, don't worry, we'll respond by email later today. Also, don't forget, a link to download a copy of this webinar recording will also be emailed to you later today for your reference, and please feel free to share this recording with your friends and colleagues. Also, at the conclusion of the webinar, you're going to receive a short survey. Please fill it out because we're always looking for great feedback from you, our valued audience. Today we're going to randomly select a couple of people from all those completed surveys to also win some Google prizes. So let's get started. Let's learn killer SEO strategies for 2014 and how to win on Google. Ali, how are you today, boss?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm actually really excited to be here today to be able to do this webinar. I'm looking forward to Christmas and New Year's and all the holidays, wrapping up an awesome 2013. Really looking forward to 2014 and what's to come, and just really excited to be able to do this today.
I am too. Let me tell you, audience, I just want you to know, it took a little bit of arm twisting to get Ali to do this today. This is a rare webinar experience for us today, so I'm so glad you are all here to witness this. And Ali, I just want to let everyone know you did this presentation at the most recent Digital Dealer Convention, and it was standing room only. And as people were leaving, they were saying, that was incredible, it was awesome, it was amazing. So why don't you tell these good people here what are the kinds of things that we're going to be learning about today, because we have a lot to get to in the next hour.
Okay, I definitely will. Before I jump into that, why don't we, since this is an SEO presentation, why don't we jump into our first poll question, just to kind of get a gauge of the audience, and if you want to go ahead and read that one off.
Okay, audience, you got it. Here we go. Your first poll question today is, well, Ali wants to know, what is your current level of SEO expertise? Please just select one of the following options. Are you considering yourself an expert in SEO? Do you think you're an advanced SEO person? Are you kind of middle of the road? Or are you definitely a beginner? Or what is SEO? So you let me know which one it is. And I see some people are writing in their answers. If you are on an iPad, then it is likely you are not, unfortunately, not able to participate in this poll question. So I understand why you're writing in. Thank you so much for that. But what we're looking for is for people to actually click on the radio buttons if that is available to you and give us your answers. And we already have a majority of the votes in, so we're going to close this poll. Thank you, audience, so much for getting involved. We'll close this poll and share the results. So 4% of you say that you are SEO experts. That's awesome. 15% of today's audience say that they are advanced. Not unusual, though, Ali. We have 49% of today's audience say that they are middle of the road, and 32% consider themselves beginners when it comes to SEO. And I don't have anyone who said, what is SEO? So thank you so much, audience. Ali, does that help you out?
It does. So just to kind of preface, I've tried to keep this kind of intermediate to advanced level stuff. So for some of the beginners, if there are things that are a little bit over your head, I apologize. I also will apologize. I am going to be kind of going over this content kind of quickly, just being that I think I might have crammed a little bit too much into this presentation just because there was so much I wanted to cover, and I've, again, really done my best to only cover the most important information. But if you do have questions or anything's over your head, obviously don't worry about it. Feel free to shoot me an email. Be happy to answer any questions, or if we have time to answer them at the end of the presentation, you can obviously write in your questions as well. So anyway, I'll do my best to kind of make this content so that everyone can get a lot out of it. So I guess let's go ahead and jump into this, and I'm going to start with what are we going to be talking about in this presentation. So first things first, we're going to be looking at how Google has changed over the past couple of years. And I think it's really important to kind of recall some of the major updates that have happened, everything from the Panda update to the Penguin update, and why those are so important to understand, because that kind of changes the way we really need to think about SEO going forward. We'll also talk about the newest update, Hummingbird. And then from there, we're going to move into kind of talking about how we can expect Google to change as we continue to move forward. We're going to look at all the different things that we're going to want to avoid due to some of these updates and kind of how SEO has changed over the past couple of years. We'll also focus on what are some of the things that we should be focusing on now, and what are some of the things that really work today. And then finally, to wrap up the presentation, we're going to look at a bunch of different tools that you could use to help manage and monitor your overall SEO success. All right, so Google keeps changing. And before we talk about how to get your dealership more traffic and better rankings for your important keyword terms, I think it's really important to understand how Google has changed over the past couple of years, and again, how we can expect Google to change as we continue to move forward. So Google keeps changing, and again, the pace at which Google continues to change keeps accelerating. There have been over 20 Panda updates since February 2011, many different Penguin updates. There's been numerous Venice changes. There's been Google 10-pack, 7-pack, Universal Search, Google Plus, etc. The list is actually mind-boggling. There'll probably be a few more updates by the time I'm done speaking here today. That being said, the real question is, how does a dealer keep up with Google and all the mixed signals that we get from SEO companies to website vendors like myself, to looking at some of the social media companies out there, internet marketing consultants, really anyone who has their hand in the dealer's overall SEO success. And the fact remains, who really is the dealer to trust these days? And the truth is, there's really no simple answer for that question. But what I will tell you is that going forward, you really do need to be a lot more careful on who you trust your SEO strategy to. Now, I'm going to tell you something that most people probably are not going to want to hear, but in my opinion, regardless of the size of your dealership, I really feel every dealership needs to have someone on staff who's really the one who is responsible for your overall SEO success. And I know that really can be, a sizable investment to have someone on staff that really gets these sort of things, but to really have someone who really gets it on staff can really be a game changer in terms of how well you do. And I don't care, I'm not saying that you shouldn't work with any third party whatsoever for your SEO success, but they can't be the only one that you trust everything to. I don't care how much you're spending with a third party, no one's really going to have the dealer's best interest in mind the way that an employee would, or someone who, again, really gets it. And the recommendation I always make is, sometimes it makes sense to look outside of automotive to find someone who not only gets SEO, but just understands, content marketing, understands social, understands all these different, kind of find the who's who of internet marketing, I guess you can say. And looking outside the industry, going to some of the different industry conferences, non-industry conferences, like things like, SES conference, or there's SMX, there's a bunch of them, South by Southwest, If you go to some of these, and there's a ton of these conferences, and I'm sure there's going to be one in your local area, within the next couple of months that you can go to. These are great places to find these people. And again, the reason I push this so hard is because if you want to have the type of SEO success that really can be a game changer at the dealership, and I'm not talking about improving your ranking for some of your important keyword terms, but really having a landslide of additional traffic, that's kind of the investment and the step that you really need to take, is having that person in-house who really gets it. So anyway, before we continue on, let's do one more poll question just to kind of have a general understanding of how, I guess, satisfied you all are with your overall SEO success today.
Oh, well, you already took the chance to read the question for me. Thank you so much, Ali. Okay, audience, look at the screen and please answer this question for us. So, how satisfied are you with your current website SEO footprint? Please select one of the following. Are you very satisfied, somewhat unsatisfied, or not satisfied at all? Whatever the answer is, we want to know. And then Ali is going to drop some more SEO knowledge on us so we can find out how to improve our SEO footprint. Once we get a majority of the votes in, we'll close this poll and share the results. And the votes are still coming in. Audience, again, I want to thank you so much for getting involved in these poll questions. They really help us out and help us to determine what's happening overall in the automotive space when it comes to actually any subject that we cover. So we're going to be closing this poll question in another 5 or 10 seconds. I hope you get your votes in. And Ali, when you're ready, I'll read you the results.
I'm always ready.
You're always ready. Of course you are. Audience, here we go. We'll close this poll and share the results. Well, the majority, 56% of today's audience, said that they are somewhat satisfied with their current website SEO footprint. 56%, that's a lot. So I'm glad that a majority of you are somewhat satisfied, but we also have nearly a quarter of you, 23%, said that you're somewhat unsatisfied. We have an even split almost. 11% of today's audience are very satisfied with their website SEO footprint, while 10% of today's audience said that they're not satisfied at all. Ali, does that help you out?
It does. It definitely does. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So first things first, let's talk about some of these updates that have happened over the past couple of years, and I guess we'll go ahead and start with Panda. So sometime in February 2011, Google rolled out a new algorithm change that we later found out was called Panda. Probably everyone here today has heard of the Panda update, but many people that I talk to don't completely understand how Panda came about and why it's really so important to understand. Panda is essentially a quality rating that allows Google to rank sites higher that their quality raters like more and rank sites lower that their quality raters like less. So Panda was actually named after the Google engineer Navneet Panda. And Navneet created a machine learning system that allows Google to take input from these human quality raters and incorporate this input into the actual rankings algorithm. Now, it's this human input that makes Panda so unique from what Google had done in the past. Google actually had testers go to thousands of sites across the internet and evaluate them based on trustworthiness and a bunch of different factors and a bunch of different characteristics. So they would look at the site and they would determine whether they felt the site had useful information, was it helpful, was the content unique, how does the layout of the site look? Is it, is the design good? Is it littered with ads? So a bunch of different characteristics that they would look at. And then, they would also kind of see, were they able to complete the types of tasks maybe that they felt they should be able to on the site? And essentially what happened is then Google's Panda update takes all this human input and incorporates it all into their rankings algorithm to be able to actually make predictions about how people would like other sites with similar characteristics to all these that were evaluated. And I guess the important thing to understand with Panda is that it's broken down into 3 main categories. Number 1 is design and overall user experience. Number 2 is content quality, which is extremely important. And then number 3 is website usage metrics. And this is one piece that most people don't realize, that Google is now actually looking at all the interactions that happen on your website, and based on what your users actually do while they're on your site, that can actually have an impact on how well your sites rank We're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a bit. So another aspect of Panda that made it so unique was that the update actually impacts the entire site. Whereas in the past, the update will only affect the single page that the infraction or poor SEO was on. So if you have a bunch of useless pages on your site that the Panda update has a problem with, not only will it affect the ranking of those useless pages, it will also negatively affect the ranking of every other page on your website. Now, the reason I bring this up is that there are some website vendors in our space that have added things like sold vehicle pages, city pages, or resource pages to their web platforms. And these types of pages really provide no real value to the website visitor whatsoever. They've really been generated just to create many additional content pages, and essentially to game Google by having all these different iterations of the same types of content with just changing, little bits of data on each one of those pages. And this is really exactly what Panda is after. And what makes it worse is that these types of pages, they tend to have extremely high bounce rates. Because when the user comes there, they see that the content quality is poor. It's just content that's been created to get them to rank. And typically, people bounce once they hit those pages. So even if you are ranking for some of those, if you look at those types of pages, look at the bounce rate of them. So these are all things that we really need to be wary of. I would say another thing to really think about is that if you're making the decision to go after, select a new website vendor, if you're being sold on the fact that, their web platform, let's say, is better because they have so many more indexed pages, this is another thing that's a huge red flag. And this type of vendor that has that sort of sales strategy, you should basically evaluate that website because that's a huge red flag that they basically have delivered a ton of poor quality duplicate content pages to increase the number of index pages, to increase how they rank. So it's another thing to really look at. At the end of the day, my recommendation here is to evaluate your site's content quality, look for different content pages that are made up of primarily duplicate content, and get rid of these pages. At the end of the day, most likely they're only going to be hurting you. Again, you can evaluate the bounce rates of those pages and then make an educated guess in terms of whether it makes sense to remove them or not. But 9 times out of 10, it really will actually benefit you if you do move them. All right. One of the other things to understand, again, was in regards to how a website visitor interacts with your site. With the Panda update, again, Google is looking at all those different interactions. And one of the worst things that can happen is something that we call pogo sticking. And anything like bounce rate, browse rate, time on site, etc., all of these different types of things are now being evaluated. So pogo sticking is one of the worst things that can happen. And what it is it's when a user conducts a search. They go to Google, they search for a particular keyword term, then the search listings are displayed, and let's say one of your particular pages is there. Let's say it's one of those pages that, again, it's a kind of one of those useless content, duplicate content type pages that really has a high bounce rate. If they click on that particular link, come to your website, and once they get to the website, because of the content quality, they decide to navigate away and go back to Google to conduct a whole new search. That kind of tells Google that, hey, maybe this particular website shouldn't be indexed for this particular keyword term because there's a high percentage of people that when we do display the search listing, they go to the site, they bounce, they come back to Google to either conduct a whole new search or they click on a different link. So this is one thing that we need to be aware of that can, again, negatively impact how we rank. So again, these are all different things that tie into the Panda update. So let's move on and touch on Penguin real quickly. So just as most of you have heard of Panda, I'm sure that a lot of you have also heard of the Penguin update. Penguin is another update to Google's algorithm that was specifically designed to punish black hat SEO. And for some of the people in the room that are new to SEO, black hat SEO is essentially shady SEO tactics that are deployed to deliberately game Google in an effort to generate higher search rankings. So last year, I attended the Search Engine Strategies Conference, and I had an opportunity to sit in on a discussion with Matt Cutts and to get some clarity on exactly what types of black hat SEO tactics that the Penguin update is really designed to eliminate. And for those of you who don't know who Matt Cutts is, he's the head of Google's web spam team. So this is the guy that's directly responsible for the Panda Penguin update and just web spam altogether. So according to Matt, some of the types of black hat SEO that the Penguin update is targeting are things like doorway pages, keyword stuffing, and spammy links. So let's go through these real quick. All right, so doorway pages. Doorway pages are typically thin content sites that have been created to game Google to rank for a specific keyword, but then require the user to actually navigate to another site to reach the bulk of the content it actually intended to find. So when you really think about this, this doesn't create a good user experience, and it really violates Google's goal, which is really to get the user the information as quickly as possible. You know, Google would prefer that you had one site with all the content in that one place, as opposed to having a bunch of different microsites that are focusing on one keyword term, drawing in traffic based on having it so laser focused, and then pushing someone to another site. Again, the reason that I bring this up is that there are vendors in their space that, again, knowingly or unknowingly deployed this tactic and created a series of very thin content sites, and called them microsites. There's a big difference between a doorway page and a microsite. So again, the doorway pages are going to be sites that are focused around a one keyword phrase, and typically that keyword phrase also tends to be in the URL that's selected. So again, if your strategy currently has a bunch of these types of microsites or doorway pages in it, I would recommend to go back, evaluate these pages, these sites, and see, number one, let's see if they're even performing. If they're not performing, then just get rid of them. You could 301 redirect them to your main site. If they are performing, you may want to make some adjustments. If you really, again, if it's would be, deemed as a doorway page, being that someone comes to the site, and in order to really complete the actions that they intended to complete, they have to go to another site. You may want to look at adding additional content to the doorway page to make it be seen as actually a microsite, so that they become, more full with content, essentially, and be able to complete that action there. That would really be the best strategy, because you may only be taking a small hit currently on some of those, but the way a lot of these updates work is as time goes on, they become more and more stringent, and they kind of make them more and more, it's going to have more and more effects as time goes on, essentially. So it's something that I would highly recommend. Do the evaluation. If you feel it might be considered a doorway page, look at different ways in which you can add more content to them. Otherwise, just 301 redirect them to your main URL.
Ali, quick question from David in the audience. He just wanted some clarification. Are doorway pages the same or not the same as redirects?
No, they would not be the same. So a doorway page is an actual site that exists, that you can actually travel, go to and read information on. A redirect would be if you went to a particular URL and it automatically sent you over to another URL. So yeah, they are definitely different things.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. All right, so let's talk about spammy links. But before we do that, let's kind of talk a little bit about what's called, off-site SEO. So one of the most important ranking factors in Google's algorithm is, again, what's called off-site SEO. And what this is essentially things that you can do on third-party websites that positively affect your website's ranking. So examples of this would be getting quality, authoritative, inbound links, or even citations from third-party sites. So in Google's eyes, if they see that there's a ton of third-party sites out there that are talking about your site and linking to your site because you either have quality content or they're affiliated with you somehow, then you in turn must also be an authoritative site, and because of that, they're going to rank you better for that. Now, being that this is one of the most important ranking factors, that's been this way for a while and will continue to be this way for probably years to come, it's also one of the most frequently abused by spammers. So webmasters are always trying to generate inbound links, and it's definitely good to do that, but if it's not done correctly, this is something that you can really get nailed for. And this is one of those things that I always recommend. You definitely don't want a third party to be doing this, because they're going to be careless, they're going to do things that can get you nailed, and this is when you really want, if you're going to do any sort of link building, it really needs to be based on a content strategy and something that you do with someone in-house who's really being careful that they don't get you nailed for this. I've actually had dealers that have got nailed. They go from having tons of pages indexed, tons of traffic, to all of a sudden they get a notification in Webmaster Tools, you've got this problem, there's a video on it, and a whole annoying process you're going to have to go to hopefully get your site re-indexed by Google. So this is something that's really, really serious. You've got to be very, very careful. And again, this is one of the items that the Penguin update is really after. And it continues to get more and more stringent. So something, again, you really want to be careful of. So when you do set out to actually generate inbound links, the key is really you want it to look very natural. You want it to look organic. So again, if you're not careful, Google will think that you're purposely trying to generate these links. And Google really doesn't want you to build links. They want you to earn them. And it's all about link earning. They want you to earn the links by having such awesome content that people actually want to link to you. That's really the strategy, not you going out there trying to generate ways in which inbound links come to your website. So some of the things that you want to avoid is, number one, if you haven't been building links in the past, you don't want to all of a sudden go out there and generate a large number of links in a short period of time. Obviously, that's going to set off a red flag. Using the same anchor text in the majority of your inbound links is also going to set off a red flag. So just to touch on what anchor text is. So if you look at the content here on this page, you've got this underlined keyword here, which is payday loan. Anchor text would actually be that keyword. Payday loan would be the anchor text of this link. So if you got a link, an anchor text that says, let's say for me, or for DealerOn's website, I want to rank well for dealer websites or car dealer websites, let's say. So the anchor text on some of my links may be car dealer websites. If all of my links say car dealer websites, it's going to be obvious to Google that as a webmaster, we've spent time to generate a lot of inbound links that have that one particular anchor text. Because if it's being done organically and naturally, some people are going to link to car dealer websites, others to auto dealer websites, some to auto dealership, dealer websites, so on and so forth. A wide variety of different variations of that same keyword. So that's something that you want to be careful of. There's many different types of inbound links as well that we're going to talk about 10 different types of inbound links you can generate. You don't want to focus on just one type. Again, that's going to set off a red flag. Obviously, you want to stay away from generating inbound links from spammy sites or spammy content like this. This article is about getting fit using these simple and easy methods, and for some weird reason, there's a link in there about a payday loan. Obviously, this would be a spammy content from a spammy site. And then also, you don't want to generate a large number of links from non-related sites. To have some from non-related sites is fine, but again, if you've got a ton of links from sites that are completely unrelated, that may also set off another red flag. All right, so let's touch on keyword stuffing. And this is something that I would say even to date, 95 to 97% of sites are doing, and even 95% of my own dealership websites are doing this. And I'll tell you why that is, but this is something we want to be a little bit more and more careful of as time goes on. So what is keyword stuffing? So keyword stuffing is by having, here's some examples of it, blocks of cities and states on a web page that you're trying to rank for, repeating the same words or phrases so often that it sounds unnatural. It's really just trying to jam a bunch of keywords into a particular page. You're overdoing it with content because you want to rank well for keywords. Here was an example we actually pulled off a dealership website. This is blatant keyword stuffing. This is what you definitely do not want to be doing. But here's the thing about it. If you look at most dealership websites, even today, and you look at the home page, at the bottom of the home page you're going to see a huge paragraph of content usually. Some people hide the content, which is really not a good thing to do by having read more there, and once you click on it, it opens it up, because that's an obvious case of you're hiding content that you don't want to throw off the look and feel of the home page, but you want to have it there for SEO purposes. My recommendation with that is to kind of rework it. At the end of the day, the reason why a lot of us are ranking so well is because we do have that content there, even with a lot of stuff that's happened with these updates. But the recommendation would be, again, the higher traffic sites are the ones that are getting nailed for these things first. And as time goes on, as they get more and more stringent, eventually it's going to affect us. And it may have already affected some of our sites. But the recommendation would be not to go back and completely, pull all that content off. It would be to, ease up off the gas a bit. Maybe do a rewrite of that content. Maybe include some photos, some images. Make it look as if it's actually meant to be there, and make it not so obvious that we're blatantly doing keyword stuffing is really the recommendation I would make. Because if you go back and you really pull a lot of that content, you may see that you're actually going to negatively affect your rankings by pulling all that content. So again, my recommendation here would be to ease up off the gas, do a rewrite, include some images and photos. You may actually see by removing some of that content, but making it a little bit more powerful, you might actually end up improving your ranking. So another thing to really consider here. All right, so let's touch on Hummingbird. This is the most recent update, the largest update, and this was, I think it was released about 2 months ago now, maybe 2.5. It was actually released during Google's 15th birthday party. It's the single largest update to Google's algorithm in over 12 years. But for the most part, you won't even notice the change. 90% of the search results actually have stayed the same. So really what Hummingbird is, Hummingbird allows Google to better understand conversational search. So instead of just evaluating the individual keywords within a search, Google's really trying to determine the intent behind the phrase or the sentence that's been entered. At the end of the day, Hummingbird is essentially Google's response to Siri and really the tsunami caused by the ever-changing world of mobile. With any of these releases, when a release comes out, Google initially will release just a little bit of information to kind of give you a basic understanding of what they've tried to accomplish. And then there's, in the SEO community, all the different SEO experts, they all have their own speculation. Everyone's thinking, maybe it's because of this, or here are the effects that it's going to cause, and here are all the different things that we should be aware of. And as time goes on, we'll start, based on a lot of that speculation out there, we'll make some changes, and we'll see how those changes actually affect the results. And little by little, we start to figure it out. And then Google releases a little bit more information. And then we kind of get to a point where finally we're starting to really get what that update was and what the real impact of it was. And then a new release comes out, and you have to start all over. But the current speculation that's out there with Hummingbird is, here are some of the things. So because it's all about conversational search, a lot of SEO experts are saying that maybe we should rethink our SEO strategy, or if we've got blog content on the website, some of the things that we should really consider doing is writing some of our content in question and answer format. So having the title of the article being a question and really all the content being an answer to that question. And that, a lot of people are saying that can help our sites rank better. Google authorship, so using rel author on your website, is now going to have a much larger impact due to Hummingbird, and I think we're actually starting to see some of that impact. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in case you don't know what rel author is. Structured data is another thing they're saying is a lot more important. We're going to touch on that a little bit as well. And then finally, Google+, and really being involved with Google+ is really going to have more of an impact with your overall search experience and how well we rank. So these are all things we definitely want to be aware of. All right. So what does work on Google? To recap, we've learned that Panda, Penguin, Hummingbird really have changed the way that we need to think about SEO. Going forward, we really need to consider the user experience. And the idea now really needs to be to focus on creating quality content. And when I say quality, I mean quality content that really wows the end user and wows them enough to get them to a point that they actually want to share it. If you can have that mindset, that we need to have a content strategy. We need to have in-house people who really get it, who really care about what we're delivering. It's not just, let's create some content and optimize it so hopefully we rank better for these keywords. But if we want a strategy that will really give us a landslide of additional traffic, it really needs to be about this awesome quality content strategy that we want to deploy. That is the new world of SEO. And that's really what it's all about. So if we could focus on that type of strategy, we're going to get people that want to share our content, and we're going to have a landslide of additional traffic. We also know now that things like over-optimization, doorway pages, keyword stuffing, and spammy links and things of that nature do not work on Google any longer. And if you're paying someone to do some of these things on your behalf, you're really playing with fire, and you need to be extremely careful. So now that we know what not to do, let's talk about some of the stuff that we should focus on. All right, so this handsome fellow, his name is David Nim. And David Mim is an SEO expert who really, for years, he's been focusing on local search. And I guess about a year ago, or maybe 8 months ago, or something like that, he actually started working at SEO Mods with Rand Fishkin. I'm sure a lot of you know about SEO Mods, but this guy is someone who really has been conducting a study for many years where he will, go after about 100 different SEO experts that are really well known in our space or in the SEO industry that are from all different industries as well, to get their views on what factors Google uses to rank websites for local search. And David has been conducting the same study for many years, and this particular study that he has more clout than any other survey of its kind. And at a high level, his ranking factors fall into 4 different categories. And those are Google+, off-site factors, website content, and reviews. And we're going to talk about those in the next coming slides. So this particular slide is kind of here just as a resource, but here are the top 20 local ranking factors. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but throughout the next couple of slides, I'm going to be touching on a bunch of these that are listed here and some additional ones. So again, I'm not going to go into detail on this particular thing. If you have questions about any of these that are listed here, again, feel free to write in a question, but let me just go on to the next couple of slides. So, all right, so your plus page or your local page, sorry, your places page here. Let's touch on this real quick. So in the addendum of this presentation, I have a resource that lists all 100 different ranking factors as well, but I'm going to go through some of them here. And I know some of these that are listed here are going to seem very basic, but I can't tell you how many times I'll log into one of my dealers' places account, and I'll see that certain very basic things are not done right, and they wonder why they're not ranking well, or their places pages isn't ranking well for important keywords that they really should be. So number one is proper category association. This is something that I would recommend each and every one of you to log into your places page just to be absolutely sure that you selected the proper categories, because this is one that just blows me away when I log in for a Nissan dealership and they don't have Nissan dealers selected as their main category. So that's a really important one. One thing is, if you can have a local area code on your plus page, it actually will have a positive impact. I know a lot of us like to use an 800 number for tracking purposes, but there are companies out there that will allow you to have a local area code and still have tracking, so you may want to look at that. Having your product or service keyword within your business title actually does help how well you rank, but it actually has to be the name of your dealership in order to use that. Otherwise, it's going to be spamming if you use that as your title or your business name, and it's not actually your business name, and you can get nailed for that. Another thing is reviews. So I'm sure by now we all know how important reviews are to how well we rank. The number of reviews, the quality of reviews that we have, all have an impact, but also the content within the actual reviews really do have an impact to how well our pages are going to rank. So if you don't have a solid reputation management process in place, it is time to really get one. It's time to have these happening on a consistent, ongoing basis. Reviews essentially to Google are additional signals that Google uses to identify your authority. It's like link building. It's like social signals. All of these are different signals that tell Google how many people are talking about you online, what your reputation is, are you an authoritative source? All of these different things are extremely important. So I would highly, highly recommend having a solid reputation management process in place. I'm sure a lot of you also know Google just released a free tool where you can manage your reputation. You can see all the different things that people have written about you. You can respond back to them. This highlights how important Google thinks it is to have a solid reputation management process. So again, if you don't have one, if you need help, pay a third party until you get it down and eventually take it over in-house. It will be with you for the long haul. All right, so real quick, a couple things that most people don't understand or don't realize and can give you a huge lift and can give you a competitive advantage over some other dealers just because most people don't know that this actually is the case. But the same way you can improve how your website ranks by having inbound links generated to your your URL, you can do the same thing for your Places page. So you can actually have inbound links built to that, because technically your Places page is like your secondary website. So linking to it from a bunch of different areas, it is actually a good strategy. The thing that can really help you there is if you've gone through all the important things you're supposed to do with your Places page, and let's say you have 100% filled out, everything is in there, so on and so forth, and you can't seem to rank for important keyword terms because maybe you're not directly within the major metro city, it's not in your address, but you're just outside of it in one of the suburbs or whatever, but that's the city you really need to rank for. This is one of those things that can give you that competitive edge. Build inbound links to your Places page, and that's something that most people don't know. All right, so real quick, let's talk about citations, which are also another off-site SEO kind of strategy. So for those of you who don't know what a citation is, it's what we call a NAP, and it's essentially name, address, phone number. So any third-party site out there that contains the name of your dealership, your address, and your phone number is considered a citation. It doesn't have to be a popular site, so on and so forth. Obviously, the more reputable sites out there or local sites out there, these are going to have more of an impact as a citation. And these are just some examples of different sites that have citation things like Yelp, local.com, White Pages, MapQuest, Foursquare, Yahoo, Yellowbook, Facebook. All these would count as a citation. And they don't actually have to link to you to be considered a citation. Though, as you can see, a lot of these actually will have a link on them that actually does link to your website, but they don't actually need a link. So this is an important thing also that establishes that you are who you say you are, you do what you say you do, and you deliver the products that you say you're going to. It's something that I would highly recommend taking a look and finding out how many citations you currently have and making sure that your citations are consistent from one place to the other. This is something that's really important people don't understand as well. You want your name to be written, your dealership name to be written the exact way on all third-party sites out there. Your address to be written the exact same way. So if you write suite, or let's just say if you wrote suite 420 or whatever, you would want it to be written S-U-I-T-E every time, not that way one time and S-T-E another. So it needs to be identical from site to site. And these are all really important things to do. So my recommendation is find out how many you have out there, make sure they're all consistent from one site to the next, and then whatever amount you have, try and get a few more of them. I'm going to talk about a tool at the end that's called Yext that can help you kind of manage this process, make it a little bit easier, because this is one of those things that, it's kind of brain damage just spending the time doing these things. So, but it is a really important thing to do. All right, so let's talk about, again, inbound links and the different types of inbound links that are out there. Now, as I said before, there's many different types of inbound links that you can generate. Here are a few that you may want to focus on. So first things first, generating links from local websites will greatly help impact your local rankings, so keep that in mind. So I always recommend my dealers to reach out to any business that they advertise with and request an inbound link. If you're spending money with a third party that you're advertising with, they should be willing to cough up a link. If they're not, then do whatever you have to do to get that link. Threaten to cancel, do whatever, because the fact remains that a lot of the companies that dealerships advertise with tend to have websites that have really, that are authoritative websites. So getting an inbound link from one of those can actually have a pretty big impact. It's not necessarily about how many links you have. It's about, the more authoritative and the better links that you have that come into your site that's important. So definitely, go down that avenue, contact the business that you advertise with to see if that's possible. Another awesome thing is if you're involved with any charitable organizations or if you do any community involvement, these are also fantastic places to generate usually local inbound links. Finally, there's a ton of other ones, things like directories, blogs, blog comments, forums, interviews, article directories. There's press releases, donations, giveaways, guest postings. All of these different types are going to be fantastic ways to generate inbound links. But the key here is not to focus on one specific category, kind of spread the love. Do a little bit of each kind. That would be the strategy if you're going to do link building. Now, the other way to do link building is to do the way that Google wants you to do it, which is essentially build such fantastic content on your website that people see it, people recognize it, and people want to link to you. That really, at the end of the day, is the best way to do it. It is also the single hardest way to do it. because it's one thing to say I'm going to create awesome content. It's another thing to actually create awesome content. So anyway, so this is all the things you really want to understand about link building before trying to go down that path. All right, so let's talk about website factors. So in addition to following kind of Google's best practices, all the simple things you're supposed to do in terms of making sure that the title of your website is correct and it's got the right keywords in there and your meta tags and the on-page content and your overall structure of the site, the internal linking structure, so on and so forth, which are kind of the basics, which I'm not going to really talk about here today. After you've done all that, the next step or the content strategy really is looking at some of these things, and these are some of the things that we recommend to our customers. Starting with an integrated blog. This is extremely important. This is where rel author is going to come into play. And what I mean by integrated blog here is that you don't have something where it's a subdomain, where it's blog.yourdomain, or on a separate domain is where your blog is. It's really going to help it be integrated where it's yourdomain.com/blog, something along those lines. The benefit of that is that all that awesome content that you're writing and having on your blog, it's on your domain. So Google then, the reason why Google loves blogs in general is because it's human-generated content. It's content that's typically vastly different than that Google sees on your typical dealership website. And Google loves this fresh new content, especially if it's being updated on an ongoing, consistent basis. The great part about having an integrated blog is it's not just the individual posts that begin to rank well. You'll see that by having that on your actual URL, it causes Google to kind of look at your website as being the content authority, and now all of a sudden, the rest of your website, the other pages on your website, begin to rank better because of that additional content that's being added on a consistent basis. The other thing that we recommend is let's take a look at reviews, and this probably isn't the best image to be here because your reviews on DealerRater really aren't what I'm talking about, but we all spend a lot of time generating reviews. We're generating it for maybe DealerRater, maybe for Google Places, for a bunch of different resources out there where reviews can be generated. But we're not repurposing any of this content. And what I mean is if you have a section on your own website where you're not creating duplicate content, you don't want your reviews to be there and then also posting them on your site, but if you have some of the reviews that you generate on your site, again, the types of content that you're going to see within those reviews typically is going to have location information, it's going to have product information, it's new, it's different type of content that's being added to your site, and it can actually have a positive impact on how well your site ranks again as having a different content type that's being added. So one thing I would recommend, if we're spending all this time doing it, when you've got a solid reputation management process in place, some of those reviews, the same way you spend time, let's generate a few for this site, a few for this site, have a few generated here and there for your own site as well. All right, so let's talk about custom pages. This is a fantastic, again, medium to advanced strategy. When you understand what are the most important keywords for you to be ranking for and you're staying on top of how well you're ranking for this particular keywords, we can create custom pages on our websites to specifically focus on the keywords that we want to rank for. So if there's a particular keyword term where it's an opportunity keyword, meaning we're in the top 10 listings, but we're not at the top of the page and we want to improve how well we rank, maybe get us to a first place ranking for that particular keyword, a great strategy is to create a content page, a custom page on that particular keyword. So that keyword would actually be part of the URL. It'd be yourdomain.com / whatever that keyword is, .html or whatever. And then the content on that page supports that keyword, and you have a process that you make sure that the keyword density is right for that particular keyword, meaning you're using that keyword enough times. Again, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, you have to write H1 and H2 tags on there, so on and so forth. And then you link to this page from many different areas on your website. You can see you can have a big impact on how well you rank for particular keywords. This whole thing that I just mentioned here about custom pages and writing content, no vendor's going to do this stuff for you. This is all the types of things you've got to do in-house. You've got to have someone who gets it, someone who can do this stuff for you, a content writer. If you've got someone who gets it, then you can hire a someone who's in college to write some of this content for you, and it won't cost you very much money. But anyway, custom page is a great strategy. Then newsletters. Again, we're looking at the potential of repurposing content. So here's the thing to clarify here. If you're working with a third party and newsletters are being written for you, depending upon the third party you're working with, that content that's being written for you may be unique. If that is the case, then a lot of times this content is being emailed out and it's being hosted on a URL by this third party, and it's only there for the sheer purpose of when the person clicks in their email to open up a web page of that same content. It's not being indexed, so on and so forth. In that case, let's take that content, if it's unique, and get it on the website. It's a perfect place to have it. That content can continue to benefit you. Again, you can rank for some of the stuff that's on there, so another strategy that we recommend. But be very careful, because most of the newsletter companies out there, they're using repurposed content, so that you wouldn't want to do. But again, if you're writing that content in-house, make sure it's on the website. Or if the third party, again, it's unique content. All right, let me take a breath here. I've been talking nonstop for...
No, you're doing good. As a matter of fact, why don't you take a little drink of water or something, because you are just throwing out so much great information, and the audience is definitely appreciating it. We have a steady stream of amazing questions coming in from our audience right now. So get ready, Ali. You're going to have a great Q&A session. Some of these questions are amazing, and they're very thoughtful, and if you're ready to carry on, you let me know, but you have about 20 or 25 questions from the audience waiting in the queue.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so earlier I was mentioning structured data and Hummingbird and how it's more important now. So let me touch on structured data. So Google has adopted kind of a new level of content, I guess you can say, that they look for on websites. Again, it's called structured data. And I think it was in 2011, so it's been a couple years now, that Google, Yahoo, and Bing got together. They agreed on a universal standard for structured data, and it's schema.org's metadata set. So if you go to schema.org, so S-C-H-E-M-A, schema.org, you can read more about structured data. Now, traditionally, Google uses your title tag, your URL, your on-page content, so on and so forth, to determine what your page is about. For dealers, it's important that things like your make, your models, your address, etc., be in a Google-optimized format, and to give yourself, an opportunity to really rank for that type of content. Now Google is giving us, another opportunity to even be more specific and direct, I guess you can say, in telling them things like, where we're located. These are all the different things that we can pass to Google via structured data. So again, it's kind of like metadata that we, our title, our keywords, and so on and so forth that's in the source of our content, source of our page. This is what it would look like. So if you do a view source on your page, if you have structured data, this is an example of it. So again, we can tell them the name of our dealership. We can tell them our URL, where we're located, our description, our address, phone number, so on and so forth. But it goes even further than that. This is just this example. You can also pass product information, your make and models. You can pass pricing information. You can pass ratings and reviews. There's a whole bunch of different things that can actually be passed. And the reason that I bring this up is because last time I did an evaluation, which I think was right before Digital Dealer, we went out and looked at most of, I think we looked at about 25 or so different web vendors that are out there today. And only half of them had structured data actually incorporated. This definitely will cause your website to rank better. We know this now. It's not just an assumption. This is something that they're doing, and they continue to make references to why structured data is important. You can actually log into Webmaster Tools and see if your site has structured data, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second as well. There's a resource there. Obviously, if Google's making it available within Webmaster Tools, and it's an important thing to do. And I'm going to talk about how you could actually get structured data on your website, even if your website provider isn't doing this, but we'll talk about that in just a second. As we said before, you can use structured data for review. So here's just a quick screenshot of an example VDP from the DealerOn platform. It's been a few years now that we knew reviews were extremely important, and we did a bunch of testing. We found that having reviews on your VDP actually will increase conversion rate because it builds the overall trust level that the consumer has with entering their personal information. They've seen maybe your 10 most recent positive reviews on your VDP. So we have seen increases in conversion rates. But how about having the reviews show up in the search results page of Google as well? If you have that, would it not increase or improve your actual CTR? So when someone does a search and they see that your VDP is being listed, and not only do they see your website, but they also see the rating and those reviews for your particular site, but all the other, say, dealerships that are listed there do not see any reviews, that's going to increase the CTR, meaning your click-through rate, the percentage of people that actually click on that link. Not only is it going to, by having the structured data there, it's going to help you rank better, it will also increase CTR. And the things that we've seen is about a 30% lift in CTR roughly by having that stuff there, having those rich snippets there. But furthermore, even if you're in like a third place listing, when you do have those rich snippets listing that additional information, you'll see that your link will actually end up getting more clicks than even the person in the first or second place. So again, it's really important to work on getting structured data actually integrated into your site. All right, so let's talk about rel author. And again, this is one of those things that I would highly recommend. If you've got a blog on your website, you should definitely work on getting Google's authorship, rel author integrated. It's not the easiest thing to get integrated, but if you work with your website provider, you can definitely get it integrated. Essentially, what it's all about is identifying a particular Google Plus account with a user, obviously, and that user being someone who is writing content, and then linking that profile with the website or the blog that content is being generated on. So it's those two elements are being linked. Content that's being written by this user, this Google Plus profile is being added to this particular site, and then it also lets Google know that content that's being written is unique to that author. What it does is it allows Google to then display more data in the search results in rich snippets. So, this is an example from the Dealer-On blog, content that I've written, and now because we have that set up, now you see a picture of me that's listed there, some additional information, and again, what we're seeing by doing this is that not only does your site rank better, your content ranks better, but you also, when it shows up like this in the search results, you actually have a higher click-through rate. So all these things are really important, and getting this stuff installed really is as simple as contacting your website provider and getting them to help you get this set up on your website. All right, so let's talk about social signals real quick, and this is kind of an old report, but the data still, for the most part, is pretty similar. I know a lot of us have spent a lot of time in social, and for whatever reason, some of us are scorned. We spent a lot of money, didn't get the results, but again, I think we're starting to see that you actually can sell cars through social. Maybe some of us still aren't, but the point is that forget about selling cars. It's about managing your reputation. It's about having content that's out there, and it's about SEO. When you're doing things in social, again, social is about the signals that we give Google to the details about our authority of our domain or our business. And, these signals allow Google to know, again, how many people are talking about us online. The concept, again, is very similar to link building, which for years has been a really important way that Google judges how well our site should rank because, again, it's telling Google how many people are talking about us online. So the number of fans, tweets, or shares that your business gets continues to tell Google how important you are, essentially. So having more of these will cause you to rank better, and it's something that, if for no other reason other than SEO, you spend time in social, I would highly, highly recommend doing so. Again, social signals, your reputation, link building, citations, these are all the different ways that Google assesses your authority online. All right, so as I'm kind of trying to wrap up the presentation, there's a bunch of different tools I want to show you that you can use to help monitor or manage your SEO success. So again, we talked about structured data. If you log into Webmaster Tools, and this is something I'd recommend, at least once a month, log into Webmaster Tools to just get a kind of a health check of your website, see if there's any issues that Google's reporting. There's a bunch of different things that I'd recommend looking in there. But first, for structured data, if you log in under Search Appearance, you will be able to see there's a little item there that says structured data. If you click on that, it's going to tell you exactly how many pages you have that have structured data on it. So if this is not showing up, it means you don't have structured data on your website. You can also go to your home page, do a view source, and see if that metadata was there. It's another simple way to do it. But anyway, this is one way. If you don't have it, you can get with your web vendor, or you can also use what's called the Google Highlighter tool, which you'll see data highlighter listed right here. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So What the Google Highlighter tool allows you to do, and this is kind of a little bit of a pain to do, so my recommendation is before you go down this path, maybe get with your website vendor and just find out, if they don't have structured data on your site yet, when are they planning on releasing it? And if it's going to be right around the corner, you may just want to wait. But again, those time frames usually are off, so this might be worth doing. But essentially what this tool allows you to do, and there's a video that will allow you to kind of better understand how it works. But essentially, let's say if you wanted to get your product information highlighted using the Google Highlighter tool so that that data can be seen by Google as structured data, you would go, say, to your VDP. And on your first VDP for a particular vehicle, let's say you highlight the year, the make, the model, and trim. And you would highlight that, and then after that you would go to another VDP. And again, you would highlight the same thing in another VDP until you've done a few of them so that Google can then establish a pattern on the data that you're highlighting from one page to the next. And as it spiders your site, it's going to highlight all that data, consistent to all the pages that it's able to find that same pattern. And that's essentially how the highlighter tool will work, and it allows you to then pass that data to Google as structured data. All right, so let's talk about a couple of these other tools here. Oh, one other thing that I should mention that I would say it's kind of important. Probably a small percentage of people are going to be in danger of this happening to, but another important thing to look at in Webmaster Tools is your inbound links. So when I was saying before how important, or how dangerous link building can be because it can negatively affect your site, you can actually get banned from Google if that's happening to you. There's something that's called negative SEO, which essentially what that is when your competitor is being really sleazy and decides to pay a third party to build a bunch of really poor quality inbound links to your website, and in the effort of hoping that you get banned or your SEO rankings begin to drop. So again, with that once a month health check when you log into Webmaster Tools, you can look at the inbound links that have been generated recently, or that, all the ones that you have on your website. And there's a couple other tools that you can use for this as well. But if you see that there's a large number of links that are being added, you have no idea where they're from or why they're being added or so on and so forth, or they're not being added to a particular content page that really has merit for people to be linking to it, this is when you want to look into Google's tool that's called the disavow tool. Sorry, I probably should have had a slide about this in the presentation. But at any rate, with that tool, you can list a bunch of the different URLs that you think are bogus that are linking to you, or are coming from really low-quality sites, and then make sure that you don't get nailed for negative SEO. All right, so moving on here. So Yext. So Yext is a tool that will help you monitor and manage your citations. It is a paid tool, unfortunately. I think it costs like $40, $50 a month. But what it allows you to do is to quickly build a large number of citations. It also allows you to be able to see, for the citations that you currently have out there, are they consistent from site to site? So when you set up an account with them, it's going to go out there, it's going to find all the different sites that you currently have citations on that it works with in its network of about 50 or so different of the important sites, I guess you can say. And with those, it's going to look at your exact listing on there. And if there's any areas where there's discrepancies between one to the next, or certain things that are not consistent, within the tool it actually will allow you to update them and make it consistent from site to site. It's also great if you've got a dealer group where you've got a bunch of these different sites to manage, where really trying to set up all the different citations for 50 different sites or so, and it would be such a pain. So that's when I would highly recommend looking at Yext. It's a great tool. We've had a lot of success with it, but just a recommendation you may want to look at. Another backlink research tool that's one of the best in the industry is Majestic SEO. So this will allow you to, A, see who's linking to you, like we just talked about, that you can see in Google Webmaster Tools. But furthermore, it's a good tool to use if you're going to do link building. Because, if you've got one of your competitors is ranking a lot better than you, and you've done everything, your content's right, and you've optimized your pages, and you've got inbound links, and you think that you're doing a good job online, this is an area that you want to do a little bit of research on. You want to find who's linking to them. Because a lot of times, the reason why they may be beating you in terms of their overall SEO success is because they've got either more inbound links from certain sources, or more local links, or from reputable sites, so on and so forth. So you can also enter their URL to see exactly who's linking to them, and then research all those different sources that's linking to your competition to see if there's any in there that would make sense for you to contact or figure out a way in which you can generate an inbound link from that site to your site. Because there's a good chance if they were willing to link to your competition, they're probably going to be willing to link to you as well. So again, it'll allow you to generate, a comprehensive list of backlinks from not only your site, but also from all of your competition. And that is also another paid tool. Here's a free one. It's called Scrapebox. This is a fantastic resource that you can use to help you generate, a large number of inbound links, or not to generate them, but to find the sites to go after to generate those links. Part of the annoyance about going out there and trying to build links is that it takes a ton of time. It's really resource intensive, and that's why most people don't, do it. But this is a tool that will help you find different sites out there that make sense to go after to generate those inbound links. It is a little bit complex, so there's a bunch of resources online through YouTube. If you just, search for like Scrapebox tutorial or how-to, whatever, you'll find a few videos that make it really easy. But definitely something that I would highly suggest checking out. Another tool is from SEO Moz. So this is a tool that I recommend, for the most part, not to, you could use it to kind of see if your website provider has their pages optimized properly. It's probably a good idea to take a look at your, at least your most important pages, from your home page to your VDP to your, some of your search results pages, and just see that, at least they've got the thing set up the right way. For the most part, most website vendors will. I will say I've definitely seen some that do not have it set up correctly, so you might want to run this report just to make sure it is right, and if not, share that information with your website provider. But this is a tool that I recommend when our dealers are going to create their own custom pages. It just helps make sure that when you do write a custom page and you have custom content supporting one keyword that you're going after, or a couple, that you've done all the things that you need to do. So this report right here will tell you, hey, for this particular keyword, for this particular URL, here's the grades you get based on these critical factors. So is that keyword within the title of the page? Is that keyword within the URL? Is it in the description, the H1s, the H2s, the body? Is it in bold? Is it in an image alt on that page? It's all the different things that you want to do, and based on that, it'll kind of give you not only these details at the top of the page, but I couldn't screenshot the whole page, a ton of other factors that it will give you. So this is a good tool to use if you're writing new content on your site, if you've got a blog, just to make sure that you're setting them up properly. But not only that, SEO Moz also has a bunch of other tools, so another company that I highly recommend checking out if you, again, serious about your SEO success. Within Google Analytics, there's a bunch of other tools there as well where you can see how well you're ranking, and understanding your rankings is really important because it helps you identify your opportunity keywords. And I'll get to that in a second here, but understanding your opportunity keywords is critical to your SEO success, or how you're going to manage your SEO. Where to focus your time is really the most important thing when you're writing content. What I call opportunity keywords are keywords that are in the first 10 listings. If you're on page 1, those are your opportunity keywords, because those are ones without too much additional work you can raise from the 10th position to the 5th position, from the 5th position to the 2nd or 1st position. And there's a big difference on where you are on the first page. By improving your ranking just from one position to the next can make a big impact on the type of traffic you get, especially if it's from what I call your money keyword terms, the ones that you get the most traffic from. But in Google Analytics, you're going to be able to see a lot of the keywords that are bringing traffic to your site, how many impressions they have, typically the average position, and what your CTR is on some of those as well. And this is changing a little bit due to some of the changes Google has made, but there are third-party companies out there that you can use. Your website vendor may have a ranking tool. Like for DealerOn, we've got a system that allows our dealers to see their keywords, exactly where they rank, and gives them suggestions on how to add additional content to help improve those rankings. But anyway, here's why it's so important to understand. So how important is it to be number 1? And this is a report from Compete that just breaks down, number 1, of all listings that are out there, 85% are from organic traffic, so only 15% are from paid. So obviously, focusing on SEO is going to be huge for you, but here's the share of organic clicks by rank. So if you're in the 5th place listing, which, a lot of times if I've got a keyword in the 5th place, even for me, I'm like, okay, that's good. I'm on the first page. It's probably getting me some clicks. But at the end of the day, you're only getting 4% of the total clicks. So jumping from 5th place to 1st place will increase your traffic for that particular keyword by 13 times the amount. So if that's a money keyword term, one of the ones you're going to get the most traffic from in general, and you go from 5th to 1st, that's going to be a huge lift in traffic. And that's why it's really important to understand the opportunity. If you're in the 10th place or 9th place, you're pretty much not even getting any clicks. But again, those are the ones where, with a little work, some content writing, a custom page, focusing on your internal linking structure on the site for that particular keyword can really have an impact. So, for the most part, that's my presentation. I hope everyone got a lot out of this, and I guess we'll move on to go into some questions.
Well, audience, was I right or was I right? Did I not tell you that Ali had a lot of awesome information to share with you? Now, Ali, just so you know, we have an amazing amount of questions from our audience. Everyone wants to know what you think about certain situations. So if you're ready, please, let's put it on the next slide and let's get to it. Here we go. Okay, our first question came pretty early. His name is Alex, and he says, and by the way, you can tell that these questions came in order, so you'll see the progression, during your presentation. So Alex asks, are the website usage metrics based solely on organic, i.e., generally the bounce rate on display ads is higher and time on site is lower than organic search?
Yes, they're 100% on. They're only on organic. Google's not going to penalize you for doing paid search, paying them money, and then having a high bounce rate and stuff. So yeah, just worry about the organic, not the paid search stuff.
Perfect. Okay, Alex, thank you so much for the great question. Next one comes to us from Jim. He wants a little bit more explanation about the doorway page. Is a doorway page like a splash page?
So that's a really good question. And technically, yes, it would be considered a doorway page, but Google's not going to penalize you on a splash page. And the reason being is because to Google, it's obvious that you're trying to direct someone into your splash page. Maybe you have different brands, maybe you have different products, and then you're trying to funnel them out from there into one of your corresponding sites. At the end of the day, if you created this as an SEO advantage because you're trying to focus on a specific keyword term and then send people out to different areas where the bulk of the content is, you would get nailed for that. But for the most part, I wouldn't worry about a splash page because usually that's going to be your group's name or something along those lines. It's not a keyword-specific strategy. But technically, a splash page would be considered a doorway page, but I don't think you're going to get nailed for that most times. Google is very sophisticated in how they identify these things, so I wouldn't worry about that.
Thank you so much, Jim. I hope that helps you out. Okay, our next question comes to us from Michael. He says, in regards to doorway pages, would you include landing pages for SEM in this grouping of limited content pages?
No. Again, when you're creating a landing page, whether it's going to be, usually landing pages for the most part are going to be part of your own URL. So that's not going to be a big deal, and they're not really set up to rank. If you have a rare situation where you've created a landing page that is specific to a particular keyword and you're trying to get it to rank as well, and you're using it for paid search, if it's ranking and it's pulling in organic traffic, then I would be worried a little bit about it. But for the most part, it would be a kind of a hairy situation in terms of that being one of those situations that you would have to worry about based on the setup. But if you have questions about a particular page and you want to just email it to me, again, I'd be happy to kind of break down why I wouldn't be concerned about it.
Okay, great. Michael, I hope you take him up on that. That's awesome. Our next question comes from Casey, and Casey's not pulling any punches. He wants to know your opinion. He wrote a very long question, but I'll just shorten it up. He currently uses DealerTrack, and he was just curious if DealerTrack is considered a top provider for SEO? Do you consider them a top provider, or is there somebody at someplace else you should be looking?
I mean, at the end of the day, the obvious answer to that question is that you should be with DealerOn. I mean,
Obviously. I told him that too, by the way.
You know, at the end of the day, so DealerTrack has a few different properties. There is ClickMotive, which was their most recent acquisition. Actually, no, that's not true. They've had another one, which was, was it MGMI? Anyway, there's 3 website companies that they now own. Or it might have been Next Step. I can't remember. But at any rate, there was ClickMotive, and the other one prior to that was eCarList. Personally, and again, I don't want to say anything about any of my competitors, but that's negative. But at any rate, between those two, I personally think eCarList's SEO strategy was maybe a little bit better, but ClickMotive is also a good one out there. But a lot of times, out of the box, they're set up right. Once you start customizing, and I would highly recommend, regardless of the vendor, that you spend some time adding additional content, because a lot of times the stuff that's released is, it's templated, and there's content that's very similar from one site to the next. But before you start making too many changes, make sure you know what you're doing, because you don't want to take their SEO strategy, their titles that have probably been tested to perform, and change it to something that doesn't perform. But I would always recommend updating, adding additional content. But for the most part, both of those are solid, SEO platforms. But any platform, even my own, we need to take it and spend some time to, mold it and make it our own.
And Casey, when you're ready to jump on with DealerOn, you just let us know, okay? So thank you so much for putting my boss on the spot, Casey. Appreciate it. Okay, let's get on to this next question from David. And David had a question that I have to say came in different forms from a few people that are on today's call. So David said, are there some places that we can go to get some more training on this? I know that Ali and probably several others on the webinar are experts in this, but I am not, and I need to be. So, Ali, do you have any advice for David and others like him who really have this thirst to know more about SEO? Is there maybe a newsletter or, any place you can send them, a book maybe?
Yeah, there's a bunch of resources out there. I mean, if you just go online and search for, beginner to SEO. If you search for that, a bunch of different links will come up, and one of them will be to a guide that SEO Moz created a while back. It's a perfect beginner's guide. It goes through all the basics, and once you've completed that, you can search for, intermediate guide to SEO, and you'll see a bunch of stuff. An advanced guide to SEO, and you'll see a bunch of other stuff come up. There's a ton of different resources out there, but SEO Moz in general is a great site that'll teach you a ton about it, all the new things that are going on, a bunch of different tools. So I would start there.
All right. David, I hope that helps you out as well as the others who asked me about that. Okay, next question comes from Jim. He says, how do I measure my organic linking?
So I'm assuming you're wondering how many people are linking to your website. So again, as we went through later on in the presentation, there's a couple different resources, obviously Webmaster Tools. There's a way that you can see all the different sites that are linking to you, and then furthermore, there's paid tools out there that you can see how many people are linking to you, like the one that I showed, which I'm now drawing a blank of the name. Majestic SEO. Geez, this one.
Okay, Majestic SEO. So that's how you would measure organic linking.
Correct.
Excellent. Jim, I hope that helps you out. You should give it a shot. Okay, let's see. This question comes from Tom. He says, does my dealership name, could my dealership name count as being a spammy link? For example, in our blog posts, I link the name of our dealership, he gave me the name of his dealership, to our website and social media sites almost every time it comes up. So if you do it repeatedly, would it become a spammy link, even though you would be that website would be an expert on that particular dealership subject, right?
Yeah, again, this is a gray area, but I personally, in my opinion, I don't think that's going to negatively affect you because you are linking the name of a dealership or the name of a business or a website or whatever it is to the website. So it's just, it could be the same thing as just having the URL being the anchor text of the link. Now, if it went down to keyword level where, it was like you were using, what's it called all the time, a city, make, dealership was the link, and you're doing that every time, that will have an effect.
I got you. But, I mean, for the most part, Google appreciates the fact that a dealership with a blog and that same dealership has a website and that same dealership has social media sites, that they would all interconnect, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Tom, hope that answers your question. Our next question comes to us from Willis, and Willis wants to know, how many times should keywords be used in a blog entry with approximately 450 words per post? How many times should keywords be used in a blog entry with approximately 450 words per post? What would you recommend, Ali?
This is one of those things that I would, if you're blogging, I would mix up. I wouldn't always do the same number. Some people say as many. With 450 words, I would say probably 3 times would be a good number, 2 to 3, anywhere between 2 and 4, but change it up. Sometimes have it be 2, sometimes have it be 3, sometimes maybe push it to 4. I wouldn't go too much more than that with 450 words.
Willis, I hope that helps you out. We have some more questions from Willis coming up in just a little bit. Okay, this question comes from Tyler. This is actually a great question. He says, as a beginner in SEO, what are some simple strategies that I can implement immediately on our website to improve SEO?
Usually the first thing to do before you do anything is to do your keyword research, which essentially what you're trying to do here is to identify what are the important keywords that I should be going after. So once you have a list of the keywords that you feel are important, and you usually can get with your website provider to kind of help you get a general list, you then know your keywords. And the way that you're going to evaluate what's important is based on what is out there that has impression share, that has a certain number of impressions. So, if you rank well for a keyword that is searched for once a month, who cares? It doesn't matter at all. You want to rank well for keywords that people are actually searching for, a certain number of times per month. Obviously, again, what I call your money keyword terms are the ones that are being searched for the most. So once you understand the important keywords that actually have people that are searching for those keywords per month, then after that, you want to go out and you want to see how well your site is ranking for those keywords, if at all. Once you've done that, then you want to take a look at, okay, these are my important keywords. Here's how I'm ranking for those keywords. Then I want to evaluate my titles of every page. The title of your page is the single most important piece of real estate that tells the search engine what this page is about and what you should rank for. The title is what's going to be visible in the top of the browser. So anyway, the title of your page is the first thing you want to evaluate and see if your keywords are actually within the title, the ones that you feel are important that actually are being searched for on a monthly basis. I mean, this is kind of a long question, but that's the first thing you should do. And then after that, you want to make sure that you have supporting content on your pages for those keywords. It's in your H1s, H2s, so on and so forth. If you want more info on that, feel free to give me a call, and I'd be happy to elaborate a little bit more. But that should give you a good initial strategy, and maybe look at one of those beginner's guides to SEO, and that'll give you more details.
And that's on SEOmoz.com, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, Tyler, I hope that helps you out. Okay, next question. We're back to Willis again. He says, can you add more franchises to your Google Plus page for proper categories, or should there be one page for each brand? Any advice for Willis?
You can add, again, it's going to be based on your URL and your location. So if you have a multi-franchise dealership at one physical street location, you're kind of at a disadvantage for the most part because, it's much easier to focus on one franchise per page as opposed to multiple because, again, the relevance continues to become less and less. as you're trying to rank better for more and more terms, I guess you can say. But if you do have a multi-franchise location, again, one physical street address, then yes, each one of your categories, if you've got 5 franchises, you've got space for 5 main categories. I would use the make, Nissan dealer as number 1, whatever for number 2, and so on and so forth. There's only 5. They have released it where there's 10 now, but that's only for new accounts. So I don't know if they're going to change that or not, but maybe at some point they will, if they haven't already.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you so much for that. Next question comes to us from David, and he says, does Google only look at Google reviews, or do DealerRater reviews still work as well? And then he later said, I see DealerRater is posted as a citation. So, I mean, where should dealers really be focusing? Should they be focusing on both, getting Google reviews and DealerRater reviews? I mean, what would you recommend?
I mean, for me, primary focus should be on Google, but definitely the other sites are important as well. There's quite a few of them, from Yelp to, there's probably about 5 or 10 in that range that are really important to focus on. And you, again, with anything, you want to spread the love. But in my opinion, Google is probably the most important. And yes, they do evaluate, all the different sites that reviews are being generated on, and within their new system, their reputation management tool, they report back on all those as well.
Excellent. Okay, David, good luck with that. Getting reviews, that's pretty interesting stuff. Good luck. Next question comes to us from Jake. He says, earlier Ali had mentioned a free reputation management tool that Google released. What is the name of that tool?
What is it called? So I forget what it's called. It's probably just something simple like Google Reputation Management. But in order to view it, you have to link your Plus page and your Places page. Once that happens, then you get access to that tool.
Oh.
If you do a search online, Google's Reputation Management tool, all the details will come up, and there's a bunch of cool articles that go into detail with all the information, how exactly you have to get it, so on and so forth.
Jake, I would love to find out how that works out for you. Thank you so much for the great question. Next question comes to us from...
Eliana, sorry, let me interrupt you real quick. How many more questions do you think we have? I have to make it to the airport, so I'm not going to have too much more time to do more questions, but we can definitely, if there's a ton more, I can email those people.
How much time do we have?
I can do maybe 5 to 10 more minutes before I got to get out of here.
Okay, let's try and squeeze as many questions in as we can. Next question comes to you from Tyler. Should our blog be embedded in our web page?
When you say embedded, I'm assuming what you mean by that is that the blog is actually on your website, meaning the content that's being added to the blog is on your URL. So again, like I talked about before, and it's probably answering your question, but what we recommend is having an integrated blog. So again, it's not on a subdomain. It's not framed into your website. So that's one thing I want to clarify. If you're framing in something, content, that does not count because it's basically hosted on a different URL and doesn't do you any good. But I'm assuming you mean having it on your URL. And if that's the case, yes, that's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. Okay, because Lisa also had a question about it. She says her newsletter is on their website, but the URL is the newsletter website, not the dealership website. She wanted to know if that was okay. So, for instance, it's www.newsletter.com / the name of her dealership.
Right. That's not. That has no SEO value whatsoever to your website. Problem being is that that content is hosted on their URL, not yours.
Understood. Lisa, I hope that helps you out with that. Willis had a follow-up question. He says, what's your advice for creating good meta tags? Or maybe, Ali, is there some place you could send him to get advice on creating good meta tags?
Again, the whole concept about meta tags, titles, all that is going to be based on using your important keyword terms within the title, making it look conversational, and not being overly spammy, kind of following some of the guidelines. If you look at Google's documentation on the accepted practices for SEO. They'll kind of give you details, and so will SEO Moz and a bunch of these other places on the kind of recommended practices. Your title should be between this many and this many characters, and don't exceed it, and so on and so forth. So look for some of those resources to give you that data.
Okay, just a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap this up. All right, Ali?
Okay.
Okay. Lisa wrote in, what was the phrase Ali used when discussing blogs? He wanted it to look like the example he showed of his blog. So I guess it was when you were talking about blogs. I didn't know which one she's talking about, though.
The things that I talked about was rel author, which has to do with the blog, which is Google's authorship. So that's REL equals, here is a slide on it. It's either that or integrated blog.
There we go. Okay. And then in regards to this as well, Karen wrote in, how important is it to have more than one Google Plus rel author attached to your blog?
In my opinion, I think it's best to just have one. To be honest with you, I'm not even sure if you can have two. You might be able to. I've never even tried to have that set up. That's a good question. I need to look in that myself. So unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that.
All right. And I just wanted to let you know, Tyler, he says, I'm currently on the SEO Moz site. He says, thank you so much for the information, Ali. And Subi wrote in, holy moly, awesome info. So impressed with Ali. I couldn't be more impressed. Well done. And I'm sure a lot of you out there are feeling the same way. I know I certainly am. Ali, you crushed it. Thank you so much. Awesome presentation. And people are writing in right now. And I'll tell you what, audience, just so you know, when this webinar concludes in just another minute, you're going to get a survey. Please do me a favor, fill out that survey and tell Ali what an awesome job he did today and how much you learned. We'd really appreciate your feedback on today's presentation. And of course, I want to remind the audience this webinar has been recorded, and you're going to receive that link so you can get to that recording in just a few hours. It's going to be emailed to you later today for your reference, and please feel free to share it with friends and colleagues. You'll also be able to view this webinar recording online within 24 hours. Just go to dealeron.com/webinars, and from there you can view our upcoming webinar schedule or access any of our past webinars too. Now, Ali, I know I got you all confused. I got you in the middle of your presentation. Do you think you could go all the way to the end now? We'll just button this thing up for everyone, okay? Uh-oh, too far. Where'd you go? Well, I want to let you know, audience, we will not be here next week because of the holiday. All right, obviously it's a big holiday. I don't know if you heard about it or not, but invitations will be going out a week from Friday, a week from tomorrow, for our next webinar, which is going to be on January 2nd, 2014, and it's called The Customer is Serious About Buying. Are you serious about selling? With none other than David Kane. So, are you ready to sell to more internet shoppers and boost your bottom line? Well, too often salespeople wait for the customer to, quote-unquote, get serious before bringing their A-game. Well, that's too late. The game's over on the first play, and if you wait, you're going to lose the sale. However, using the right strategy on today's savvy internet car buyers will maximize profitability, dramatically increase inventory velocity, and greatly improve customer satisfaction. Famed automotive trainer David Kane will discuss how internet salespeople can win the competitive race by providing remarkable value in their responses and effectively engaging with today's empowered buyers. These cutting-edge strategies used to generate all-important prospect interaction are the same ones employed by leading dealers, and they'll work for you too. Don't miss this opportunity to make a tremendous difference to you and your bottom line. Join us for our very first Dealer On webinar of the new year and learn proven strategies to make 2014 your best year yet. If you want to rock 2014 with cutting-edge strategies, increase sales, and all-around automotive awesomeness, then you simply can't afford to miss this webinar on January 2nd. There'll be another fabulous presentation by your friends at Dealer On. Don't forget, Dealeron's weekly webinars are held Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And we have some amazing webinar subjects planned for 2014, but if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions regarding these webinars and our topics, then feel free to contact me directly. Again, my name is Eliana Raggio. I love hearing from you. I'm everywhere on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and all the automotive social networks, so track me down online or email me at eliana@dealeron.com. And before I sign off for the very last time in 2013, I want to thank you all so very much for spending this time with us today. And on behalf of the entire staff at Dealeron, I want to wish all of you and your loved